back, basketball fans. I'm your host, Sean Temesi, and you're listening to the 6-Year Stint NBA podcast out of Vancouver, Canada. If you're a first-time listener, I'm glad you've chosen to take the time to check out our podcast, and I encourage you to subscribe and also follow our Twitter page, which you can find by searching at 6-Year Stint on Twitter. For those who are frequent listeners, thank you for your continued support and viewership. You truly are great fans, and we appreciate all the feedback you're giving us on iTunes reviews and with your mentions of our show on social media. Now, today we have a very special guest, a new friend of the pod from Seattle, Washington, Serigne, who is a huge NBA fan of our show as well, and is also kicking off his passion for sports journalism with a new website and a new blog for his NBA-related material and basketball writings with hooptalkdaily.wordpress.com. Without further ado, I'd like to welcome Serigne to the show. Today is the Thanksgiving Day break in the NBA season, where we have no scheduled games in spirit of the holidays. So how are you dealing with that, and how are you doing otherwise?
Yeah, thanks for having me. Kind of sad that there's no NBA games, but it's cool that I get to take the time to kick it with my family for this day, but, ready to talk some hoops, yeah.
Yeah, well, I'm not even with my family at the time. In Canada, we have a different day for Thanksgiving, so yeah, kind of weird. I totally forgot that that was even happening. But to start off, I guess we should talk about the Lakers, and they've been off to a really nice start to this season, something I don't think a lot of people expected. I talked about that in episode 71, The Lake Show is back, and I think it's interesting to kind of hear what you might have to say about this. I mean, certainly they don't look so great after last night. They lost to the Warriors pretty bad, 149 to 106. But how do you feel these Lakers have been playing lately otherwise?
Yeah, no, they got beat pretty bad. I feel like it wasn't too hard to predict. Anyone could have really predicted that they were going to lose. It kind of seems like the Warriors kind of figured them out.
Yeah.
The first game, I think the Lakers kind of caught the Warriors by surprise. I think they beat them by how much, like 20 or something like that.
Yeah, it was exactly 20. Yeah.
Yeah, no, nobody was expecting that, but I guess Warriors have been studying the Lakers, how they've been playing for the last few games, and I think also it's a back-to-back, so they're going to be playing again on Friday in Los Angeles. So I'm excited to watch that. I didn't get to watch the Lakers game against the Warriors because I was at work, but yeah, no, it's gonna be really exciting to watch them on Friday.
Yeah, well, I mean, it was interesting because the first game they were healthy, they had all their players, and then obviously, like you said, the Warriors probably studied them a little bit on that second matchup, and it didn't help that Julius Randle and D'Angelo Russell were both out, probably their two best players right now.
Yeah, they didn't help them at all.
But I mean, I'm sure that's going to be something they don't have to worry about next matchup. But how do you feel Luke Walton has kind of transformed players like D'Angelo Russell and Nick Young, who kind of had bad reputations before? How do you think he's been able to kind of change that?
Yeah, no, Luke Walton has done a really good job. Like number one, he got Nick Young to finally play defense, which is something that
Yeah.
not really that easy to do. And not just like defense, like really good defense. He's like stealing passes from his own teammates. It's kind of funny. But yeah, no, Luke Walton has done a really good job. Way better than Byron Scott. Byron Scott wasn't really playing D'Angelo Russell and Julius Randle that much, which is like, if you're like rebuilding, it's really essential key to at least get the players that you're trying to rebuild around a lot of like time on the floor, so that they can sort of see what it's like to get really big minutes. And this would be the perfect time because like they don't. This would be the perfect time because right now they're not really winning, and it doesn't really matter. Well, they're winning now, but it wouldn't really matter if they lost. So
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly interesting what he's done with Nick Young, because Nick Young especially, I mean, D'Angelo had the luxury of being a high draft pick, and obviously the Lakers aren't ready to give up on him right away, but Nick Young already was in a lot of trade rumors, even rumored to be waived at the beginning of the season. Just a month ago or so, and now he's actually been playing defense. He's been shooting a lot more efficiently, especially from the three-point line. I mean, he hit that game winner against Oklahoma City the other night, where he traveled, and the NBA actually announced that they admitted that was a travel. It was a bad call. They shouldn't, or a miss, or a no call. And but I mean, he hit that game winner, so I guess it's all good, and
Yeah,
it
and it's
doesn't
weird
matter.
because Nick Young is he's looking sort of like the veteran on this team, which is how old is he? I think he's
Yeah.
late 20s or early 30s. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's weird because he looks like Uncle Nick Young, like old man Nick Young, but he's actually like kind of in his prime right now. So that's
Right.
kind of interesting to see how he's sort of leading these players, which is something I never really thought Nick Young would do. I thought that was more Kobe's thing last year because last year he was looking more of like a role player, and now
Right.
he's like this mentor, and he's teaching D'Angelo Russell and Julius Randle and all of them, like the
Yeah.
ropes, and yeah, so that's
I
really
also
interesting to see.
I like and I mentioned this before, but I really like that he's actually staying there because him scoring whatever 15 points per game or so, a lot of the times not even starting. I mean, that is sort of a good thing on a team that's really young, like this team where it almost feels like they have three rookies in Ingram and D'Angelo and Randall because those guys never really got to play enough with Kobe around. So you've got all these really young guys, and it's good that you have this sort of fake bubble of points coming from Nick Young, which obviously in a year or two when he leaves the team for whatever reason, if they choose to do so, those points are going to be allocated to all these players so that they can improve their numbers, and it's not just going to be sort of a quick, oh, if they would have waived him right now, then D'Angelo and all these guys would be asked to score 20 plus points per game, which I don't think they're ready
Yeah.
to do right
Yeah,
now
no,
unless they're
that
going
would
to
that
go
would
back to
totally
back.
kill their development. I think it's good if
Exactly.
they, yeah, but
Yeah, so I mean, it feels like they're kind of pulling all the strings properly right now. I'm surprised with how little Brandon Ingram's been able to play so far, but I think it's a smart move since he looks like a really raw player at this point. So I
and
mean,
if you look at that, if you look at the teams like, sorry to cut you off, but if you look at the teams like sort of like how much minutes they're playing, no one on that team is playing over 30 minutes. So it's
yeah.
like it's kind of cool to see like how Luke Walton, like he sort of brought like the whole Warriors, like effect, how everyone plays as a team, you pass the ball, there's not really one person that sort of does everything. Everyone's sort of been sharing the ball, and that's really nice to see, especially from a young team, because not only is this helping them now, but they're gonna grow with this. Like in a few
Right.
years from now, it's gonna help. It's gonna come a long way soon. So
Yeah, and I mean, a lot of these veterans on this team are actually doing a pretty nice job, I think, of integrating and kind of keeping the flow going without sort of focusing too much on their own stats, and understanding that they're kind of just temporary pieces right now to help these young players. Like, I mean, I was not a fan of the Timofey Mozgov contract this summer, but
yeah, I don't
it
think no one
certainly
was.
seems to be. Yeah, I don't think anyone was, but I think
Yeah.
it's sort of paying off now because he seems to be pretty productive. I mean, really can't complain. He's doing his usual thing. So,
Still a ridiculous amount of
oh
money paid for someone that barely played in the finals. But I mean, hey, he's doing
yeah,
what he has to do. So
I mean, he's mostly known for getting dunked on by DeMar DeRozan, Blake Griffin.
yeah,
So
yeah.
I don't know. But I mean, as far as the rest of the season goes, where do you think this team's going to make some strides, and what are some things that you think they should focus on? And do you think this team is going to make the playoffs?
Well, the thing is that, well, I kind of really want them to make the playoffs because,
Yeah.
like, even if they do make the playoffs, and let's say they face the Warriors, like, first round and they get swept, doesn't matter because you're a young team and at least you made the playoffs. Like,
Uh-huh.
that playoff experience is like, it's gonna like go a long way for them, and it's really gonna like, it's gonna be such like a confidence boost so that next year they come in, they're like, oh, okay. It like pushes them like 2 years ahead of like where they're actually supposed to be. So it's like
Right.
next year they come in and they're like, okay, we made the playoffs. We're good. We made the playoffs last year. Now let's try to make the aim towards the second round. And they could come in, like losing seven first round, and then it's sort of just like it helps the process go along faster.
Right.
So that's kind of where I want them to land. What they should focus on, like more right now, I really think the main thing they should really focus on right now is sort of growing, because a lot of these guys are really young, just growing. Sort of, it's mostly like off the court stuff. Like they need to
Right.
build a team chemistry. Uh, sort of because a lot of stuff that happens off the court can affect like how they play on the court. So building team chemistry is one thing that I feel like they really need to focus on. Not that like their chemistry right now is bad, but
Mhm.
like it will go because like they already have the talent for the future. So
Right.
if they can just sort of focus on playing as a team and buddying up something like that, then I guess that'd be
Well, it's a very good core, and they seem to have that figured out. I mean, it's not even just that they have like one or two guys, and they need to keep kind of building like a lot of teams. This team sort of seems to have hit the money, and they're just kind of it's time to sort of let those core players grow together, like you said. And I think actually making the playoffs would be not just good for experience reasons, but also because I don't want to see this team sort of end up like Minnesota in a way, because last season I feel that Minnesota underachieved immensely. Obviously, you can blame that on the unfortunate death of Flip Saunders and Sam Mitchell being a really, really bad replacement. But I feel like they shouldn't have ended up with a top 5 pick. And because they did, they ended up having to draft a player that looks like he could be a star in Chris Dunn, but it just looks like his career is not really going to take off in Minnesota with all those other guys there. And it almost feels like they're overpiling their plate, and they're going to have to make a move because they can't keep Wiggins, Levine, Towns, Jang, and Shabazz Muhammad, all these guys like
they still have Rubio.
even Tyus Jones is starting to look like an NBA player. So it's just so many assets that you're not going to be able to keep realistically. And I think the Lakers don't need another top 5 pick or anything like that. And if they do end up with a lottery pick by missing the playoffs or whatnot, I think they should be focused on getting like a nice role player or someone who's just sort of more of an energy guy, and not so much try to get another starter or another star, because it seems like Jordan Clarkson, Brandon Ingram, Julius Randle, and D'Angelo Russell, and even Larry Nance is pretty much your starting 5 now. And I don't think you need to add to that any more stars. So I think winning a lot of games it should be a priority, because ending up with a high draft pick, obviously no one complains about ending up with a high draft pick, but it can have an inverse sort of consequence to it. And I hope that doesn't happen to them. Yeah.
Yeah, no, totally agree. Like yeah, just hopefully they can make the playoffs because that would help their growth.
It'd be exciting too, because I feel like in the West especially, we've seen a lot of the same teams over and over and over again. I mean,
Yeah, and these teams are getting older and older, and it's sort of like
yeah,
a lot. It's like you see the East, like it's a lot more competitive. Like it's not very top heavy. Like if you look
right.
at the West, you have like the for sure locks. You have the Warriors, you have the Spurs, and then you have the Clippers. Like those are the top 3 like locks that they're most likely they're gonna be in the playoffs.
Yeah.
Yeah, if they're gonna be like the top 4. Either way, it can like switch. But and then you have like the bottom, which is sort of like it could go like either way. And then like it's like in the East, you had like last year the number 1 seed, the Cleveland Cavaliers, and the number 2 seed, the Raptors. I think their win differential was only like by 3 wins. So it's like
Right.
yeah, so
Right. And it doesn't help though that the Lakers are kind of actually trying to win properly for the first time in the one season where it seems like there is absolutely nobody tanking yet. And it feels like a lot of the times, that it takes a while, because it takes like maybe a team like the Pelicans. If Anthony Davis goes down with an injury, then they're tanking,
yeah, but
obviously.
it's
And
also
that's, yeah,
yeah, no, but it's also the beginning of the season, and usually like all the teams have they're like, oh yeah, we can do it this year, at least 8th seed.
right.
And then once you get towards the All-Star break, you kind of like, okay, let's just start losing and let's try to get these draft picks. But yeah,
Right.
yeah,
But it does feel like because of this, they're probably going to have a much harder time trying to make the playoffs, because I
hmm
mean, honestly, at the beginning of the year, at least, it seemed like maybe Brooklyn, they didn't have an incentive to tank because they didn't have their pick. But
hmm
it seemed like Brooklyn was going to be bad. It seemed like the Sixers were probably going to tank. And
hmm
now it just feels like Brooklyn's surprising a lot of people with their grit, and they're not letting these games go to the other team. They might not
yeah,
be the best, but they're still fighting it. And it looks like Philly is actually trying to win games. I mean, Joel Embiid had a little hissy fit on the bench the other night because they went to overtime, but he had already reached his minutes restriction, and
hmm
he was frustrated because the team training staff wasn't letting him go back into the game. So everyone seems to be trying to win. So the Lakers are kind of caught in this bad situation. But I think they're probably still going to be in the fight. But there's a lot of teams that are aiming for that 8th seed that maybe shouldn't be aiming for that. Like a lot of teams in the West for sure. But it's going to be competitive down the stretch. I feel like we're not going to know what this team's playoff hopes are going to look like until the very last couple weeks of the season.
Yeah, speaking of the Sixers, when do you think they're gonna like trade one of the three big men? Because I think they still have Noel, they still have like Sharik, they still have Embiid and Okafor. So like, if you were the GM, like, how would you start like to rebuild this team? Because like I don't. It doesn't look like there's like a set direction that they're like going in right now because they have all these pieces, and they still have Ben Simmons who is out, who could also play like the 4 if you wanted him to, because isn't he like 6'10"? So it's like, yeah.
Oh, I mean, I think the reason we see so many teams right now kind of hesitant and not really jumping ship on all these assets that they're piling up. I mean, you look at the Sixers, the Wolves, the Celtics. Why aren't they kind of jump starting this? I think it's because in the 2000s we saw so many bad draft picks or future draft picks get traded away, and now everyone's scared of sort of shipping off the next superstar without knowing how valuable they really are. But I think the Sixers should know, let's build around Embiid and Simmons. These are the two guys that have showed actual promise. Noel has had his chance. I think Noel is a solid NBA player, but I don't think that's a guy you want to build around. He's just kind of a piece. I think that's certainly someone they could trade, but I also see them keeping him just because he's probably not going to demand that high of a contract. I don't think that many teams are looking to pay that guy so much. I think right now what they should be doing is definitely keeping Embiid, keep his minutes restriction, but then I think Okafor has to leave. Okafor just doesn't fit at all in that scenario. There's no way where I see Okafor staying. Ben Simmons, the promise is just so high. I could never, if I was the GM, I could never ship that off for anything.
Definitely.
So I would probably keep Embiid as the 5, and I would try to see if, and I think Simmons is probably going to come back midway through this season. So maybe test the waters with how an Embiid and ball pushing Ben Simmons could work as a front court. But I think 100% before the deadline, you need to trade Okafor because his value is only going to go down. And I think Saric is a piece that you could just kind of keep on the bench for now. I think he needs to get used to NBA play before you can really make a call on him. So Noel, I think you should probably get rid of that, but I think priority should be getting rid of Okafor because that's just not.
See, on it, if what I would do, this is like a really unpopular opinion, but I say you trade away Noel and Okafor, and Noel and Okafor, and then maybe try to put Simmons at the 4. And if I were to trade him to a team like Boston and try to get what's his name, Jaylen Brown, because Boston does need a lot of help with their bigs. They have Al Horford right now. They do have Olynyk, but I don't really see him as more of a starting center on like a contending team. You give them Okafor, they have rim protection. Horford can stretch but then also looking at the 76ers, they have Jaylen Brown. I don't know what they're gonna do with Nick Stauskas. Maybe they can also try to get another guard with the Celtics trade. But hey, I say you have Embiid, then you have Ben Simmons, and you have Jaylen Brown, and then I don't know what you're gonna do with your guard situation, but I'm pretty sure you can figure that out because they're probably gonna be a lottery team this year. Maybe grab Markelle Fultz. That's a team that could be a championship contender right there. So I don't know.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, Markelle Fultz, I mean, from what I've seen, looks amazing.
Yeah, I know.
I really like that kid's game. I think he's going to be the first overall pick.
Definitely.
But I don't know if that really works with Simmons, because Simmons kind of seems like a point forward to me, even though he plays the 4, which we haven't seen in a while. But I feel like that's a good idea. I don't know, Jaylen Brown. That's kind of, a lot of people really don't like him, and a lot of people really do.
It's weird. I feel like I was the only one that really liked Jaylen Brown, because like a lot of people I talked to, they're like, "Oh yeah, I hated him," but I thought he was really good. Like he's really athletic, and I don't know. Yeah, he's athletic. That can go a long way. But I don't know if you put him on like the right team, he could probably develop into somebody really good. But
I feel like he's I've heard that he's a very intelligent guy. I mean, he went to University of Cal
mhm,
on purpose because he could have gone to other schools. He went there because for an academic reason. I think he really liked whatever he was studying. But apparently he's a really smart kid. He's really coachable. But I
mhm,
don't know, watching him, he reminded me a bit of Shabazz Muhammad in college, where it's kind of just like
mhm,
I mean, really, really athletic, really
mhm.
impressed by his ability to get to the rim in a lot of different ways. But I don't know, the shootings, apparently it was there in summer league and stuff, and then now it doesn't really look like it is. I've heard a lot of comparisons to Jeff Green, which I know that the Celtics probably didn't like, but I don't know. I feel like I'm still waiting to see if he's going to be a productive player. For all I know, he could be in the D League in 2 years. For all I know, he could be an All-Star. So
Yeah.
that's an interesting one. Let's talk about the Miami Heat. You said that was your favorite team.
Yeah.
Apparently, why is that?
Uh,
From
well,
Seattle, why is Miami your favorite team?
as you know, we had the Sonics. They left it around '08, and that was sort of like around the time where Dwayne Wade was sort of like I guess he
Oh
was
yeah.
arguably like one of the best player, like the best player in the NBA. And me, I
Hmm.
was like 12 or 11 years old. I was like, hey, Dwayne Wade's my favorite player. I'm gonna like the Miami Heat. So ever since then,
Okay, that's fair.
I've sort of liked the Miami Heat ever since then. But yeah,
Okay.
if
Well, I mean,
I really wish the Sonics were still around. That would be awesome. But
well, congrats to you for not ditching that team after they've lost so many superstars over the last
yeah,
2 3 years. I
yeah,
mean, pretty much all of them. Uh, what do you
pretty
think
much
about?
everyone. Yeah.
Yeah, what do you think about Dwayne Wade's departure and how that kind of went down with Pat Riley? I mean, Jordan and I have talked about this before, but I'd like to hear someone else's opinion because I find it really shady. And Jordan and I both really didn't like Pat Riley's move.
Yeah. No, at first, my first reaction, I was really mad at Dwayne Wade, but then after I thought about it for a little bit, I was like, hey, like, he's helped bring so much like wins to this like organization. Not only wins, but he's also brought them a lot of money like with like ticket sales and stuff like that. But
Right.
it kind of sucks how Pat Riley would do something to Dwayne Wade like that by not paying him like the amount of money that he should have for all the pay cuts that he's taken so we can bring guys like LeBron James and Chris Bosh over. But yeah, no, it's really shady. I think Riley should have just given him his money, and I don't. Riley should have just given him his money. That would have been the perfect move. I mean, maybe it probably would have even brought us some wins also. Because right now we're kind of struggling at the guard like spot. We have Tyler Johnson and Josh Richardson, but Josh Richardson hasn't really been playing to the expectations like a lot of people have been holding him to. I was really
Yeah,
hoping like Justice Winslow would have a really good season this year, but he's
that
been
hasn't
injured.
happened.
Yeah, he's been injured for the past few games, so I don't know. That really sucks because it's his like third year, and like I was like thinking about Paul George, like oh yeah, his third year once the superstar left, he like sort of took that role. I was hoping Justice Winslow would do the same thing, but that hasn't
Right.
happened yet. Hopefully, when he comes back, he can bring at least a small contribution to the team. But right now, sort of, I think we're 4-10. We just lost to Philadelphia yesterday, which is like like
That's tough.
yeah, no, that's I can't even. I was just like, wow, that's and it was in overtime also. So I don't know, that really sucks. And there was also this play I saw where Son Whiteside he like dunked it into it or like his own basket to 76 off of a rebound from I don't know who shot it, but I just saw that and I just like after that I just went straight to looking like okay, so who are the best picks from who are the best players that are going to be in the draft this year? Because like right now,
Yeah, that's kind of
yeah.
those kind of plays sort
Yeah,
of sum up the whole season for you right there.
yeah,
Big,
no. After
big
that, I just
spot.
sort of kind of started losing hope in Miami. But hey, hopefully, if we don't make the playoffs, we can get, which we probably won't, we can get a good pick in the draft, and I guess that would help.
Yeah,
Not
well,
really, yeah.
it seems like they're headed in that direction. I mean, like I said, not a lot of teams are tanking, especially in the East. So
Hmm.
maybe there's that kind of window. Maybe they can try to get a top 5 pick. I
Hmm.
mean, I was surprised certainly with when I looked at how Winslow's been playing these first 14 games,
Yeah,
11 or just under 12 points per game. He's been shooting horribly from the 3-point line,
terribly. Yeah, no.
21%. I mean, that's just terrible. Um, I don't know. This Heat team has been off to a really bad start. It seems only 5 players have been in all 14 games, so they've had a lot of injuries, and it just doesn't really make sense. Like you said, it would have been nice to have Dwayne Wade stay here, and I don't think it was the same case as Los Angeles, where it was like, okay, well, now we can get rid of Kobe, he's gone, and now we have room for these young guys. Dwayne Wade would sit out at least, 20, 30 games every season. And he's never really been that much of a command the ball kind of player. He can do other things. I think in the playoffs, people just overreacted because in the playoffs, he had the ball in his hands a lot. But that was only because, he was the only experienced player out there on his team. So I feel like Justice Winslow would have only benefited from having Dwayne Wade stay on this team. Learn a couple things from another wing who's obviously won a lot of championships and done it the right way. And I just don't really understand why you needed to kind of get rid of Wade. I think it was really unfair because he had taken so many pay cuts over the years with the big three. He was always the first one to take the pay cut. And then it seemed like even afterwards, he still didn't really get a big reimbursement for that. So it was, I totally understood why he left. I don't think he wanted to leave. I think he was just kind of uncomfortable and he was forced to kind of make a decision he didn't really want to do. And then Chicago just kind of came into his lap. And I think that's just strange. This team, they didn't have a lot of young players. Other than Winslow and arguably Tyler Johnson and Whiteside, it didn't really feel like there was a lot of guys waiting on the bench other than, maybe Josh Richardson. But it doesn't feel like anyone was kind of hoping Dwayne Wade would just leave so that they could get more minutes. I don't think Dwayne Wade would have hurt this team if he stayed. And now it just seems like they have a couple nice players, and then the rest of the team is just a collection of scrappy guys that are probably not going to be on this team next year. So
and
odd.
Hassan Whiteside is looking like he could be if we don't change things, he could be out within the next 2 or 3 years. If you look at his stats, 17 points per game, 15 rebounds. If you throw him on Portland, they could be a contender because right now I think they're below 500 Portland. But I don't know. I feel like he would have worked out a lot better on any other team. But I don't know.
Well, it's just that is true because he, despite what a lot of people may think, he's actually 27 years old. We just started hearing about him 2 years ago, but that's because he had already been in the league and kind of found his way out of it, and then now he just kind of had his resurgence with the Heat. But he's almost 30. He's not going to be able to just put up these numbers forever as a big man. And I think the clock's kind of ticking on that. But I think they're more concerned with Winslow because I think that's sort of their guy. And he's only 20 years old and he already looks like possibly the next Kawhi Leonard. So I think that's and then Josh Richardson looks like a really nice player too.
Yeah, I know people were calling Justice Winslow the steal of the draft, and I don't know. He's not really living up to that name, but I don't know.
Yeah, he's had a rough start. I feel like he's been pressured to kind of score, and I feel like he hasn't been able to do that. And I think he's not ready to be a lethal three-point shooter, so he should probably stop attempting three every game and maybe settle for mid-range and attacking the paint for now. And maybe next summer he can work on his three-point shot and hopefully improve on that. I'm sure the coaching staff is doing a great job with him there. That's a first-class organization other than Pat Riley kind of being a douche.
Yeah, I feel like we need to work on that two-guard spot because right now our starting shooting guard is Dion Waiters.
That's not
yeah, no, he's looking like a player that could probably play in China right now. But I don't know. He's averaging 13 a game. But I don't know. He's a lot of people don't like him. I personally don't like him.
No, me neither. Never been a huge fan of Dion. So let's talk about the Knicks, I guess. This team has been sort of in a funny way off to exactly what everyone sort of thought. Really inconsistent play, confusing offense. And this part surprised me, but they're horrible at defense. 27th in the league right now in defense. nothing unusual, but it certainly is disappointing when you add a bunch of key free agents and you still don't look like a playoff team.
Yeah, no, it's like I wasn't really surprised that they weren't going to be a good defensive team because if you really look at their lineup, a lot of these players they don't really have that one defensive player that can sort of that doesn't because a lot of their players are like their game revolves a lot around like offense. Like you have Derrick Rose, you have Porzingis, you have Melo, you have
Right.
Courtney Lee. Joakim Noah is like the one guy I guess you can say, but he hasn't really been playing to everyone's expectations.
No.
He has
And he's on a
8 rebounds.
minutes
Yeah,
restriction as well.
yeah, same. So it's like. Yeah, I don't know. Joakim Noah, I guess he was supposed to be the guy that was supposed to be the sort of defensive presence, but that hasn't really been working out. Right now they're 7-7, just right at. They're really inconsistent. I know they went on like a losing streak and a winning streak. It's just been going back and forth. Yeah, so it's really
It's
hard to
tough.
tell where they're gonna.
I think it's confusing because a lot of people that have sort of talking about Carmelo. I mean, a lot of people have said he needs to be a little bit more aggressive. Last year, he only had, I think, 21 points per game, and he was actually passing a lot more. He had around 4 assists per game, which was a career high in that category. And now he's back to just about 2.5 assists per game. His offensive numbers look around the same. He hasn't really taken that leadership role, I feel. And just watching the Knicks, it doesn't even really feel like he is the go-to player anymore. And it feels like it's, there's not a lot of passing in this offense. It's funny because Brandon Jennings is actually leading this team in assists with only 5.5 a game. No one else on this team has over 5 assists.
And he's coming off the bench, so it's like, yeah,
it's pretty bad. And he's only playing 21 minutes. And Derrick Rose is the starting guard and point guard, and he's only got under 5 assists per game. I know that Derrick Rose is not a pass first guard, but I mean, he's had to take steps back because of his injuries. So I would have expected a little bit more in the assist column from him. And it just feels like there's no movement. There's not really any. I mean, they seem to have good chemistry. I mean, whenever Kuz and Hernan Gomez and all these new guys are scoring, everyone gets excited. They seem like they're really happy for each other. They seem like a fun team to be on right now, but it's just not really clicking when it comes to winning games. And I don't know. I don't know why they haven't been able to kind of put a better product out on the floor. And I feel like that's mostly to do with coaching and the organization's, sort of hesitance to kind of throw away the triangle. And I don't really understand why that's still even in the conversation anymore.
And honestly, if I were the GM of the Knicks right now, I say you just trade Melo because honestly, he's really holding this team back. I feel like they shouldn't like they've been trying to like build but in the wrong way. I feel like they should have just completely rebuilt it ever since they sort of saw an upside from Porzingis. Because right now they like half their team looks like they could be good. They would be a contender in 2011, and the other half looks like they're going to be a contender in like 2020. So it's like I don't know. I feel like if they're in a weird spot, kind of like the Chicago Bulls, where like they have all these young players, have a lot of upside, then they have a lot of these old players that are past their prime, or even just like kind of washed up and they had their days. So it's I don't know. It's really weird, but they're 7-7. I'm not sure. It's really hard to predict where they're going to be. I have them making the playoffs in my standings, but yeah, that's only due to like there being some teams in the East that are really questionable.
I certainly also thought they would be making the playoffs, but now I'm not so sure anymore. It feels like their GM, James Dolan, or their owner, I should say, is always kind of been more concerned with big names, bringing in a lot of revenue, not so much putting a quality product. I mean, you'll never see the Knicks sort of play like the Spurs with a lot of guys that you may not have ever heard of, but they're playing really efficiently. That's not really the Knicks style, especially with this ownership. And it feels like Carmelo has engraved himself so much into the New York sort of community and the New York lifestyle. And I mean, his wife also being so involved, and they sort of seem to be really set on staying in New York. It's just kind of an awkward situation because he's 32 years old. His numbers aren't what they used to be. And I mean, we all know he's just not really a guy who's going to lead his team anywhere when it comes to playoff time. And it feels like Porzingis is, you know, a once in a generation type of player that is 21 years old, already plays like a vet. And that's a guy I feel a lot more confident in the playoffs with than a guy like Carmelo, who's unfortunately had next to no success in that area. So I don't know. I feel like if I believe more in the Knicks organization, I would say that they're just sort of tinkering with Porzingis for now and letting him learn a few things from good players. But because I don't have that confidence, I think they're just kind of standing around not knowing what to do and sort of being stuck between a rock and a hard place because they don't know what to do with Carmelo. And that's evident because they're bringing in players like D Rose and Joakim Noah, who have terrible injury history. And they're bringing in guys like Brandon Jennings, who hasn't really had a great reputation around the league. So it just doesn't make a lot of sense. And I feel like, like you said, they should have just started from ground zero and gotten rid of Phil Jackson. Instead, they have like 3 different movements going on at the same time, and they don't really know which one to choose. So
yeah, it's like a clash between eras. But no, I say you trade Melo to a team like the Thunder or Clippers, a team that really needs this, that's sort of struggling in the small forward spot. Get some assets back. Just start all over. Hopefully you can, in a few years from now, you can be sort of, or even next year, be in the position like the Lakers, where like it doesn't really matter if you win, but because you know you're going to win within the next few years, just sort of focus on rebuilding.
Right.
So, yeah.
Right. I think they kind of half-assed it with the approach because, everyone knows New York. It's a great market. Yeah. Who wouldn't want to play there? Well, they sort of said, okay, well, we don't need draft picks because we can just get free agents. But then if you're just going to get free agents that have injury history and are over the age of 30, then you're not really doing that well either. So it doesn't really make much sense. And you mentioned that. Go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, no, you can go.
Well, you mentioned that they could maybe exercise trading Carmelo to the Thunder, and it's interesting that you mentioned that because I've heard a lot of things about maybe Rudy Gay being traded to the Thunder as well. And I mean, now that I haven't heard anyone say Carmelo to the Thunder, but that's an interesting option there, and I feel like that's a similar player to Rudy Gay, obviously better, but. Do you feel like the Thunder should be trying to get that small forward right now just to sort of fill that void Kevin Durant left? I personally feel like that would just be kind of trying to reset what they already had in a less organic way. I feel the Thunder are on a good pace right now because guys like Steven Adams, guys like Cantor, guys like Oladipo, they're all sort of younger players that are learning a lot, and they're all getting better with increased roles. And obviously Westbrook is a god among men, and I mean he's just going to do what he's going to do. And I think that's a really good situation. I don't think they should be bringing in another superstar kind of score first guy. I feel like maybe they should try to just see what this season can do for them, and maybe in the off season try to get some free agents or maybe trade for a draft pick or something. What do you think the Thunder need to be doing? What do you see there?
Well, I only brought up the Melo trade because I thought it would be more, it would help the Knicks more. I wasn't really taking into consideration whether it helped the Thunder or not because I don't think that trade would help the Thunder.
Okay, good.
But I wouldn't be surprised if they made that trade because teams have been making a lot of questionable decisions lately. But I think they should really just roll with what they have. If they start losing more games, maybe try to go out and like around trade deadline, if they're not playing as well as they expected, maybe they're around the 8th seed about to fall out. I think it wouldn't hurt to go and get a Rudy Gay or a Carmelo Anthony because if you're getting worse and worse, might as well try something new because you're not just going to keep going with what you have because that obviously isn't really working.
Right.
But and later in the future, if it seems like things aren't working out, go and get go get a forward or a guard. Well, not guard because they have Oladipo, but go get a forward like like Rudy Gay or Melo, because that would only help their situation. And yeah. But I totally agree with what you think. If they keep winning, they should roll with what they have and just sort of don't change what doesn't need to be fixed. So.
Okay. Well, I think sort of to wrap things up, do you want to talk a little bit about your blog and your website? And you said you were working on a new site. Maybe give us a little info on that.
Yeah, I had a previous site. It was called Hoop Talk Media. So I wanted to change things around because a lot of the things that I said on there were really questionable, and I'd had it for a long time, for about a year. So I don't know. There were things on there that I didn't really like. But I'm starting this new one. It's called the Hoop Talk Daily. I'm going to start posting on tonight. I've been working on a few articles since this morning. Hopefully I'll get them up by tonight. But yeah, I've been really trying to get more into sports writing because I like writing. And sports is something that especially basketball is something that I have a really deep passion for. So yeah, just something that I like to do. So the URL for that is hooptalkdaily.wordpress.com. And you can also follow me on Twitter at King Serene. So yeah, I would always post tweet and stuff a lot about the NBA and games that happen. You could also hear my opinion sort of on the spot instead of waiting for an article. So.
Right on. So certainly check that out if you guys like reading NBA articles and you're interested in that sort of thing. You're mostly covering the Heat, or are you doing sort of all the teams?
I do everything. But yeah, there's really nothing to talk about with Miami right now. So I like to. Ever since the Heat started losing, I've sort of turned more into a basketball fan than a fan of the Miami Heat because it just sort of like pisses me off whenever I see. Yeah, so I've been sort of looking at a lot of other teams because a lot of the stuff that other rebuilding teams have sort of has sparked an interest in me, kind of like what the Lakers have been doing. So I like to write about everything. So.
Right. Well, Heat Nation is certainly a really strong fan base, I feel. I mean, I noticed the other day they were 6th in attendance last year with Dwayne Wade, and now they're 12th in attendance. It's quite a drop, but they're still in the upper echelons, I guess, in the upper half in attendance rate. So, I mean, hey, credit to them because I'm not sure if I would be able to watch Justice Winslow shoot 20% from 3 and go out there. So credit to Heat fans for sticking with it and doing that.
Yeah, hopefully we can. Hopefully sooner than later we can start winning games and be back in this whole playoff conversation. But I don't think it's going to work out this year. But
yeah, well, it's always good to remain hopeful. Well, Serene, thank you very much for being on the show. It was great to have you as a guest, and you're welcome to join any other time. And make sure, guys, listeners, that you check out his Twitter at King Serene, and make sure you check out his new blog and website for NBA articles. Until next time, you're listening to the 6-Year Stint NBA podcast. You can find us on SoundCloud, iTunes, and other podcasting apps. And you can be sure to subscribe on there. And please follow us on Twitter at 6-Year Stint. And until next time, thank you for listening, guys. And thank you, Serene, for appearing on the show.
Thanks for having me.